Ladies and gentlemen, independent Americans around the country and around the world. Believe it or not, August is here. The summer has flown by. It's been a wild and weird one, and it just keeps getting wilder and weirder. I am back from vacation, and to help us sort through all of it, I could think of no better guest than a returning champion, maybe my favorite person in cable television, which is a bit of a high bar, at least my bar.
Yeah.
The great and powerful Michael Steele is back on Independent Americans. Welcome back, sir.
Hey, dude, it's good to be back with you. I'm loving the look. I can see you had some sun, baby. I see you had some sun, right?
I told you, man, I was in the Bahamas. We actually took like a real family vacation. And of course, that's when shit happens, right? You know this. Like every bit of shit has happened on like a Saturday. I think Biden announced he was dropping out on a Saturday.
Right.
Trump got shot on like a Friday. I think it was like, can we have one weekend of peace, please?
Let me have my vacation.
Right? I think we all kind of feel like we need a breath. And I noted before we hit record, for those who are watching on video, no John Wick background for you. You're coming.
I went with the sort of higher sort of intellectual approach this time.
What
as opposed to like, let's rack them and stack them, baby.
What are those hallowed halls behind you? Is it the Capitol?
This is a colonnade from one of the memorials here in DC. So it's just a nice little background pic. So,
well, I think maybe it underscores a more serious tone to what's happening as we rush toward the finish. I'm so happy to have you back. Lots I want to get to.
Sure.
Your show is now getting bigger. This race is getting more intense. Your viewpoint is always unique. But let me ask you to start with, where are you and how are you?
I'm good, man. It's like you said, it has been one of the wildest 5 weeks in modern politics, certainly modern political history. It's been this sort of back and forth, and it's interesting. There are a couple of things, quick takeaways that I think are important to set the stage for what is about to happen over the next 10 days, and that's the Democratic convention, of course. So you had the former president, Donald Trump, do this debate. He basically spewed bile and bullshit from his mouth for an hour and a half. Joe Biden couldn't form a sentence. And America watched him literally sort of crash and burn during the debate. And Donald Trump was feeling the juice. And at that moment, he knew, I don't have to debate him again. I've got this. So he goes into his convention. He announces his running mate. He gets shot and has the convention. The thing, Paul, to note that in all of those episodes from that Thursday night until Joe Biden dropped out of the race, Donald Trump moved exactly, wait for it, 2 points in the polls. 2 points. He was up by 4 going into that debate. And then when it was all said and done, he was up by 6. So that told me that a lot of Americans had already baked into their psyche what they thought about this president for re-election. Meanwhile, Joe Biden crash and burns. Kamala comes in. He endorses her. $200 million raised literally in 24 hours, $310 million within the first 4 days, 170,000 plus people volunteer within the first 24 hours. You're having these massive Zoom calls with hundreds of thousands of people on there donating money, millions of dollars. All of that is compacted over the next few weeks. She announces her running mate and Governor Tim Walz. She turned what was a -6 for the Biden campaign into a +2 for her campaign, an 8-point swing in that same period of time. What does that tell you? That the voters now have latched on to a narrative that they have probably wanted for a while. And that is, can I just have a little bit of joy? Can I just Can I see something positive? Because remember, what we've been hearing from Trump has all been dystopian bullshit. It's been like, oh my God, the economy's crashing. The world will never be the same if you don't elect me, et cetera, et cetera. And she's like, you know what? We're going to take care of our children. We're going to care for our parents. We're going to create a better a stronger economy. We're going to value the work of and labor of workers. And so voters are sort of saying, I'd like that. So when you look at this sort of 5-week window, you go, oh my God, you watch the political pendulum literally swing in a direction pushed by the American people. Yes, these political events, candidates stepping down, others imploding, et cetera, are factors. But the voters, I think, have found something very interesting. And independent and center-right voters are the linchpin in that swing. And that can't be lost, at least I hope to heaven it isn't lost on the Democrats, that's their sweet spot in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, Arizona, are independent voters like yourself, center-right voters like myself, who are who are going to make the difference in this election. And that is going to be fascinating, watching Kamala come into her convention, the siren song for Joe Biden, where they serenade him and thank him for his public service, hand the torch officially to her. She comes out of the convention. I will not be surprised if she has a 4 to 6 point bump coming out of the convention.
So that takes us to what is the pendulum swinging in the other direction. I'm glad you focused on independents and moderates, because I do think this is really the year of the independent voter. You know, in some places, the independent candidate. There's still RFK out there, right? Which maybe we can touch on in a second. But I think the bigger question is, I always want to talk about not just what's happening now, but what's happening next. Honeymoon period is here. You know, they got this great launch of Tim Walz. They're going to go into their convention. And then what do you see happening? Can they ride this honeymoon all the way to the election? Trump, it's not beyond Trump to drop Vance, right? Like it's not beyond.
It's not beyond it, but he can't do it, right? Yeah, it's not.
But how do you see? Do you see this euphoria, right? Like James Carville and others have cautioned, hey, don't get too euphoric. Even Tim Walz yesterday said, hope is great, but we need a plan. Right. Do you see them having the ability to execute against this map with these candidates to win?
Yes, I do. So a couple of things on what you just said. One, James Carville is absolutely right. He took a lot of crap from folks when he said it a couple of weeks ago, and he was right then. He's right now. Tim Walz, the governor, knows what he speaks. What the Democrats have to do is take everything that we know that and we see happening out there, and then you have to channel that into infrastructure. You've got to channel that into get out the vote efforts, fundraising efforts, grassroots organizing efforts, communication efforts. You just can't let that euphoria, do an event, 15,000 people show up. And my question to everyone, going back to when I was a county chairman, was, okay, so we got all these people in the room. What do they do tomorrow? Mm-hmm. What do they do tomorrow? Because when they leave here, I need them to work. Because for me, it's all about the work. I can do happy face all day long. I can dance on top of a table and a hula skirt. But when it's all said and done, I got to then walk out the door and get to work, right? Because that euphoric moment has to translate into something. And so what Carville, myself, and others, now Tim Walz, have been saying is we've got to put that on the ground. What has to happen, Paul, and you know this, I know this, the Democrats have to overwhelm the ballot box with the vote. This cannot be a close race, America. This cannot, I'll repeat it, this cannot be a close race. This cannot be a, 289 to 211, electoral college vote. This has got to be a 307, 315, damn near 400 electoral college votes. It's got to be a clean sweep in all the critical battleground states for sure. But you've got to overwhelm the ballot box with the vote, and that requires organization. It requires infrastructure. To their great credit, the Democrats have spent a lot of money on the ground already in these battleground states as well as other states. So they've got the infrastructure there. Now they've got to shore it up They've got to take those 170,000 volunteers and put them to work. The Republicans already told us what their playbook is, and they continue to tell us. And you know why they tell us, Paul? Because they don't think we can stop them. And their playbook is very straightforward. Don't worry, we already have our embeds in critical battleground state boards of election. I give you what's happening in Georgia. Look at what the Georgia Board of Elections is already doing to frustrate the purpose of the vote in that state, to set up the steal, which is what it is. They're looking to steal this election because they know they can't win it outright. And they damn sure know they can't win it now with a Black woman at the top of the Democratic ticket. The one thing I learned a long time ago is when you cannot run against history. If the American people have an opportunity to make history with their vote, they will make it. And so the question then becomes, how do you sustain that energy? And how do you then level up that vote in such a way that you overwhelm the system? So you're looking at not electoral college, but you're looking at, across the various states, a total popular vote in excess of 5-10% more of what it was before. I mean, you really got to level that up, because that will translate, as the math goes, it translates to winning Wisconsin instead of by 30,000 votes, by 60,000 votes. You know what I'm saying? So
Trump's calling. We can see this framework. So Trump calls his shots. He always does, right?
Always does.
He telegraphs his punches. He calls his shots, right? And the Democrats are trying to flood the zone. But they also, I'm with you and Carville and others. I'm saying, focus on the work. Don't get too excited, because, the old saying, Republicans fall in line and Democrats fall in love, has never been more true than in the last couple of weeks. They're feeling it, right? In the same way Trump was. But I wonder what your view is specifically on, let's call it 10 million voters that they're fighting over: independents, unaffiliated, influenceable voters in key swing states that are a large part of our independent community. Now you've got the most right-wing ticket we've ever seen, with Trump and doubling down on Vance. And no moderate was looking for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, right? They are both definitely left of center. They are progressive, arguably the most progressive ticket we've seen in modern times. When I talked to Tim Walz on the phone, I honestly didn't think they were going to pick him, because I didn't think he was in the running. And I also thought maybe he was too liberal, right? I thought they might pick someone more moderate like Kelly or someone else. But now that that is set, I am hearing from a lot of folks, especially on the economy, who know on the Democratic brand. They won't say it out loud, but we know that the economy is still really hurting the Democrats, and especially with non-college educated men in swing states. How do you see them? Do you see them having the ability to kind of repackage Kamala, or do they not care?
Well,
how do they attack those voters specifically that they've got to win?
They do care. They do care about that. It is concerning for them, and so I kind of come at this from a number of different perspectives, because at a certain point I have to cry bullshit, because I get the whole, oh my God, the economy is bad stuff, but then I'm looking around, I'm going, objectively, where is it bad? I had a friend of mine.
But they're also talking about taxes, right? Like,
right. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So I had a friend of mine. You just got back from your family vacation. I had a friend of mine back in June. We were talking, and he was wailing on about how god awful the economy is, and inflation is high. I'm like, dude, inflation is 3.1%. What the hell are you talking about? He was like, oh, gas prices are high. I said, no, gas prices aren't high. What do you? They're down from what they were a year ago. We were going through the whole thing, and then I looked at him and I said, I don't really understand your bitching. You're about to take a $10,000 vacation with your family. So if the economy is so bad, where'd you get the money for that? How are you doing that?
So we had this conversation last time. Do you think that's what they
such tough days? Why aren't you stockpiling that cash instead of giving it to Disney? And so he looked at me, and I said, well, that's the point. A lot of folks out here are wailing about an economy that they're fully participating in. We didn't see a drop off in people taking vacations this summer. We didn't see a drop off of people traveling. We didn't see a drop off of people shopping at the grocery store. The American people fundamentally bake in their circumstances and their situation into what their livelihoods are. And they've baked in the cost of doing things. They're going to provide that vacation for their family. Why? Because they want to, right? And where they need to cut a corner, they cut a corner. So I think sometimes this conversation around this sort of dystopian economic environment is overblown. Because
Can I ask you to talk, because we had this same debate back in February when you came on, and I understand your position, and what you're trying to do is convince people to believe something different than they believe.
No, I'm not. I'm not. Well, I'm not trying to convince.
Let me finish. And
no, but I don't want you to incorrectly state my position.
Okay, but that's what
I'm not trying to convince people of anything.
That's what Biden was doing, right? Biden was saying, "Hey, it's not that bad. Inflation is not that bad. Gas prices are not that bad. Your economic situation is not that bad." And people said, "Fuck you, Biden. You don't understand my life," which is what they often say about the Democrats. Right? Working people who were not Democrats often say that. Fuck you. You don't understand my life. You don't understand my struggle. You don't understand how hard I'm working. You don't understand my job. I see an economy that scares me, right? And we're talking a lot about working class, non-college educated white people, right? And putting a pin on that, I think, is important. But is that going to be the strategy for Harris, or is it going to be, let me tell you what my vision is instead?
I think it's going to be
what my story is.
Yeah, right? It's not,
which is different than battling in the trenches over whether or not
you're not going. Well, and you're not going. You're right. You're not going to battle in those trenches. And my point of sharing that story was to say that I do get that not everybody's financial circumstances is the same. And the point is that for everyone who's saying, "Oh my God, it's awful," there are people out there who are not in that circumstance. So the question for a campaign is, where do you strike that balance? Right. Where do you fully acknowledge that, yeah, the economy is not just objectively, it is fundamentally better than it was a year ago. And that you have more money now than you had last year. You know why? Because inflation is lower than the wage that
But they don't believe you. That's the point. Like, they don't believe you. They don't believe the Democrats.
But I don't get what they're not believing, because it's objectively in their bank account. I don't understand what they're not believing, because because the cost of the things that you're buying is down from what it was. So is it still higher than what it was before COVID? Yes, but you know what? When gas was 50 cents a gallon when I was 18, 19 years old. I would love for gas to be 50 cents a gallon again. It ain't going there. So you know what? I spend the way I can afford to spend. So what they have to do, to your point, is she's got to tell the narrative. And this is an important point here. She's now got to translate into what she is going to do. We did not know what a second Biden term would look like. He never really told us, for a whole host of reasons. Right. She has to tell us what a first Harris term will look like. So she has to talk about and address, yes, I know a lot of folks out in America are still hurting. They absolutely are, because there are parts of this country, in Mississippi, in Appalachia, in other parts, in Watts, in Baltimore, right, where communities do still struggle. Folks are living paycheck to paycheck, if they have a paycheck at all. Mm-hmm. I get that. So this is my plan for us. We're all going, a rising tide is going to lift all boats, right? That's the goal here. Everybody's going to benefit from this.
I think that's the right message. And I think really I'm not going to put words in your mouth. What I think the Democrats would be a whole lot better doing is saying, our message is different and our messengers are different. And we've got Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, who aren't going to sprinkle on your head and tell you it's raining. Like they are going to tell you, I feel your pain. Right. I do understand where you're coming from. Tim Walz is going to say, I've been a teacher, I've been a coach, I've been in the military, I understand.
But he's a governor and he understands it better than anybody, because as a governor, as a chief executive.
That's a different approach that she's already taken. And we'll see. Because ultimately where they lose the most is on the economy, right? That's where they're having the hardest time. And it's also Republicans who just see Democrats as higher taxes and they don't want it, right? And there's an influencer class, business owners, others who view Democrats as worse on business than Republicans. That they're still fighting that, right? Whether she can bridge that gap, or she just says, you know what, they get that, we're going to have abortion. They get that, we can have national security. They'll take other areas to fight. Right. But I'm curious to see, and I hear it, especially on MSNBC and other places, and I think most of all, the question is, like, if you make Tim Walz your guy, who says, hey, I've been broke. I've had, 2 kids. I don't have any savings, right? We all know he doesn't have all these investments. I think that's really powerful for them to just relate on a
I agree.
level.
And I think they'll do that. I think they'll
Yeah.
do that. But I think you also have to reconcile with the feeling versus the reality.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the economy, because it's always difficult to do, because as you rightly note, I'm not walking in Paul's shoes and Paul's not walking in mine. So when Paul says, dude, I'm not feeling this economy, I have to have mad respect for that, because I'm not in your house.
Yeah.
I don't know what your obligations are. I don't know what your income is. I don't know what your circumstances are. Same with me. So a politician has to be mindful of that. And the frustration is when you've got a lot of objective facts out here that tell you that things are good or getting better, it's just an uneven feel, because there's some parts where the message lands and it resonates with people like, yeah, things are better.
I just think this is not a facts election. This is an attacks and emotion election.
Yes.
And I think they gotta take the lead on that. That's why I've challenged Tim and others. I said, look, you guys got caught flat-footed on this Swiftboat shit. How did you not see this coming? Why were you not? I said it to him, to others out loud. I wrote a piece for MSNBC. I'm like, you Democrats suck sometimes at execution. And like, you should have known this was coming.
Well, they said they saw it coming.
But they weren't ready for it.
Well,
and that's even the press tells them now. Now they're admitting it, right? You should have had all his paperwork ready. You should have had all his validators ready, right? You should have had all that stuff. One big Bible on Tim Walz. As soon as you announce it, boom, here he is.
But so let me ask you this. But
and hold on, can I just ask you to finish? Let me just finish this point if I can, because I think it takes me to a larger one, right? Like the Democrats got to act not like Democrats, right? That's what I think in order for them to win.
Well, they can't do that. They disabuse yourself of that notion. They can't do that.
I know. But I wanted to ask you before we go deeper into this, because I know your time is short. I want to ask you, every time I have you on, you're still a Republican.
Yeah.
Only Republican on MSNBC. You said to me, let's get through the convention and see. Now you got Trump, crazier than ever, more radical than ever. Now you got Vance, who I tell my kids, like, you want to see what the devil looks like? That's the devil right there, okay? Right? I tell my kids that, because he is the worst possible for moderate people, for independent people, for people who support Ukraine, for people who support honesty, integrity. You want a role model. He's the worst fucking guy they could have picked. Tuberville might not have been as bad, okay?
Right? Oh, wow.
But they picked Vance. So I'm asking you again.
Yeah.
Are you still a Republican? And
yeah. Because where am I going to go?
Independent.
What do I do as an independent?
You preserve your integrity.
I think I preserve my integrity pretty well.
Yes, but why? So the question is,
because
why associate yourself with that?
I joined the party. I've told you that I've joined the party at 17. Why should I walk away? I didn't
because it's on fire, and it's
okay. So my house is on fire. I could just walk out the door and let it burn, or I could try to put some of the fire out.
So did you go to the Republican convention, or are they letting you? How do guys like you and Kinzinger and others?
The Republican Party isn't doing jack with me, and I'm not looking to do anything with this form of the party. I'm looking to break this thing. Yeah, I want to break this party. I want to destroy it. It is apostate.
That's what I want to hear.
It is not conservative. Yeah. It is not even Republican. It's not even remotely Republican. So, they're the ones pretending that somehow MAGA is a legit philosophical, ideological construct. Right. It is the essence of bull and shit. and so the reality of it is, for me, I said this to some folks many years ago when all of this really kind of got underway. I said, this is my house as much as it is there. If you come to my house and you start breaking my furniture, why should I leave? My goal then is to throw your ass out. Yeah. Right?
They're not even letting you in your own house anymore.
I'm still in the house, dude. I'm still in the house.
So let me ask you.
They don't get to define this. This like with Liz Cheney. Yeah. So the Wyoming Republican Party thought they were doing something by declaring Liz Cheney is no longer Republican. And Liz laughed at that, saying, really? You don't get to make that decision.
I understand that. Yeah. So do you and Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and other folks like that, do you start Republican 2.0? Do you wait for this whole thing to collapse and then you come in and pick up the pieces?
All of the above. Right now, Paul, all of the above is happening. All of the above is happening. And so,
because as an independent, if there was an Adam Kinzinger, Michael Steele, Liz Cheney, reasonable Republican Party, you'd get a lot of our folks. Right?
I know I would. I would. And that for me is what motivates me, because I know a lot of independent voters like yourself are former Republicans, they're former conservative or traditional Democrats, wherever the arc of their story has been, they now find themselves as the largest voting bloc in the country. Some 47% of the country identify as independent.
It was up to 51 in June.
And so the reality of it is, it's a bigger space that is untapped potential for not only having a different kind of conversation on policy, but redefining the nature of our politics. This is why I love what you're doing, your voice being in the spaces in, because you do anchor a lot of that energy around some clearly objective, identifiable goals and ideas. What I'm doing, staying inside the party, is manifold. One, I stay because it pisses them off. Two, I stay because this is my house. I freely chose to come here at 17 years old when it wasn't popular to be a Republican, let alone a black-ass Republican. Come on, seriously? Growing up in D.C.? What, are you kidding me? So, philosophically, that's where my mooring is. I still believe I've never identified myself strictly as a Republican. It's always been as a Lincoln Republican, because fundamentally what the party started as and stood for was individual liberty. And that's the freedom for Paul to live his life however he wants, to make the choices that Paul wants to make for him and his family. The only thing I'm going to do on that battlefield is when the government gets in Paul's way, I'm going to come in. That's when I get in the game, right?
So how does this look? Like 4 years from now, if Trump loses, then it's a battle within the party.
Oh, yeah, baby. Bring it.
For you guys to make it look like the Lincoln Republican Party, and they make it look like the MAGA Republican Party, and maybe the party splits in half, or maybe it's a brutal fight, and the Democrats.
How was the Republican Party?
The Democrats are just sitting there going, "Thank you, keep eating your own." Right?
Well, no, not really, because at the end of the day, if that fight occurs, it's gonna occur between factions within the party.
Yeah.
So that's not going to end. You'll have people who stream out because of the fight, and they'll land up in your space. So it'll be more folks in your camp. But at the end of the day, how do you think the Republican Party was formed? I mean, we were born out of the Whig Party because of an intra-party fight.
Yeah, I think that's
over slavery.
That's what's really exciting right now, right? And I think to put a point on it, like, I think the challenge that Harris and Walz and the Democrats have right now with most independents is actually not very philosophical. It's not very tactical. It's not very fact-driven. They want to feel okay with this. Right? They want to feel okay with her, who they don't feel great about, right? She's not that popular among center right. They didn't pick somebody more moderate, right? And they're not comfortable with the Democratic brand. They're not comfortable with seeing her supported by AOC and Bernie Sanders and all these other folks. So there's a level of comfort, right? And I think the commander-in-chief test is one of those things. And Tim Walz, I think, helps her on that, right? They feel better with someone like Tim Walz. Sorry.
Right.
They feel better with someone with Tim Walz, but I think the variable that I'm watching for is the economy, disasters, national security, and Biden's health and Trump's health, because either one of those things could upend.
Biden's health, yeah. I mean, at this point, Biden's health will be whatever it is over the next 6 months, because if God forbid something happens to him, she'll assume the presidency. If she wins in November, she will assume the presidency. So in that, if she loses, okay.
That's the part I'm saying. It's not off the board that something could happen to Biden between now and November. We all saw him, right? And I don't know, as many people said, is he going to make it through this debate? Right? And we wonder, is he going to
Biden is old. He's not on his deathbed. The man was just out on a bike ride that probably neither one of us would actually want. I know I would probably go, you know what, guys, I'm going to stop at this tree and have a drink. Look, the man's 81 years old. He has the most stressful job in the world. He's not collapsing under the pressure. There are issues related to his health that I think have nothing to do with his mental acuity, because he's able to run the country. He has run the country. So I'm less concerned about Biden,
I think you're in the minority on that
at
one.
81.
I think you're in the minority on that. I think everybody's concerned about
you know
it.
what? I don't really care where I am on that,
Yeah,
because I think at the end of the day, where I am is exactly where it's going to be. I don't see any evidence that Joe Biden is going to keel over and die between now and November 5th.
Okay.
So, if anything, Donald Trump will wind up shitting the bed faster and sooner.
I put that in there too. I think that those are the
have you watched? And this is the other thing that kills me. Everyone has been so fixated on Joe Biden, while the 78-year-old, 208, almost 300-pound fat guy, no one is sitting there watching
not
him
everybody.
literally,
not everybody.
literally
maybe everybody
freeze in the middle of a speech.
Yeah, maybe not everybody. Maybe everybody on Fox, maybe a lot of people on MSNBC. But this guy has been saying for over 2 years, the biggest variable in this entire race is the health of the two old guys who are out of shape and could die any minute.
Just know that young
one of them is already down. One is down. He's
just know that young people die too. So, we sit here and we look at the.
But we're also talking about an environment where the 80-year-old is asked to fly around the world and the other 80-year-old is getting shot at. Okay.
Well, but the 81 that's flying around the world is flying around the world. They're not wheeling him off of Air Force One in a gurney.
Not so much anymore, Michael.
Dude, the guy. Look, you can have this debate. I just watched the man do a bike run. So look, I don't see Donald Trump doing a bike run.
I'm not putting my kid on the back of that bike with him. I'll tell you that right now. I mean, I'm not, and I'm not putting the new codes there either. That's what I'm worried about.
The new codes are following him on the bike. So
I know, a separate bike. I hope.
I think we're good.
Let me ask you. You got to go. Let me ask you. I always ask you, Wes Watch. We always talk about Wes Moore.
Let it go, brother. Let it go.
You always sit steady, easy, steady. Okay. He's had a big couple of months. He was rumored as a VP candidate, probably unlikely. He's going to have a big moment at the convention, right? But now he may be looking at 8 years from now, even longer. But objectively,
he's got to get past Josh Shapiro. He's got to get past Josh Shapiro. He's got to get past Gretchen Whitmer. He's got a long line of folks in front of him that he's got to get past who have a higher national brand and ID than he does. He's got to work that. Part of the problem for him and for others was Joe did not get a second term. Because if he had, then you're opening up 2028. He'd then be a sitting second term, assuming he wins re-election in 26. He'd be a sitting second term governor running for the presidency, the best perch in the world to be in. That is not now going to be his narrative. It's not going to be the narrative for a number of folks. And so the landscape, and this is the one thing I try to tell folks about politics. The thing today that's the it figure, player, person will not be the it player or person tomorrow. And by the time you get to the 2028 cycle, I guarantee you, well, first off, if Kamala's in the White House, she will be an incumbent president going for a second term. So now you're talking 32.
Right.
All right. And at that point, if you're someone like a Wes Moore, you're going to be probably, at least 2 years, 4 years out of office by that point. So the political dynamics are going to change quite a bit. The Democrats have a very deep and good bench of candidates for future office. Republicans have a bench. If they were normal Republicans, it would be equally good and deep. But because they've all MAGAfied themselves, they become less credible and relevant in presidential races. Because I think the country is fundamentally going to shift to the center left for a short term, largely around not so much policy. It's just that everybody on my side is batshit crazy. And so there's going to be an avoidance for a lot of that potentially. So guys like Wes, it's going to be a very interesting thing. I said it to you on the last couple of times I've been on a podcast. What I told him was just do the job in front of you. The job ahead will materialize and manifest itself in the right way at the right time. If the presidency is something that's going to be open to you, it'll be open to you. You'll take it regardless of what you're doing. But right now, you're the governor of Maryland. Do that right, because trust me, if you get that wrong, it won't matter if you run for president, because that will be a rope around your ankles that will make it very hard for you to swim against that that tide of other candidates that you'll have to swim against. So.
Well, right now, you're a voice of reason. You are the only Republican with a show on MSNBC. I keep saying that, and congratulations.
Thank you, bro.
I love your co-host, but I also wish you had an additional hour of your own. You might be the head of your own party, but not the party you knew before. So I'm still rooting for you to leave the Republican Party.
This is why I love my brother Paul, folks.
I'm still rooting for you to leave, because I don't think they deserve you. And if you started something new, I'd be interested in supporting it. And I think
look, dude, if I started something new, I'd want to start it with you, because I think that's where the future. I'm being very serious here. I think the future lies in Republicans like myself aligning with independent voters and movers and shakers like yourself, creating this new alliance, because it's about giving the appropriate permission structures to both our camps to recognize this is where the future of the country is. And I really believe, look, Trump loses in November. I'm doing everything I can to make sure that happens. When he loses in November, the fight inside the GOP is going to be real. It's going to be fierce. If he wins in November, God forbid, I'll be back on this show probably letting you know that I've now joined your ranks. Because at that point, it would be the official, not just.
I'm gonna hold that thought for 1 second. Right? I'm keeping the camera because I have a gigantic bottle of champagne, an absurdly large bottle of champagne that Rachel Maddow actually gave me when I stepped down as CEO of IVA. If you leave the Republican Party, I'm popping this motherfucker right here.
Well, I'm coming.
I am recruiting for none of the above. I am recruiting for no party. We have Independent Veterans of America. You've been great in spreading the word about that. We're doing that right now.
Yeah.
So until that day, congratulations. Thank you for making so much time. Thank you for all you do. Look at this champagne, man.
I see it, baby. It looks good. It's a good bottle.
This is something, I don't even know how much this thing costs, but it weighs more than my kid. Thank you for all you do, sir.
Thank you, Paul. Love you, man.
Happy summer.
You too, bro. Take care.
Stay vigilant. Thank you.
All right, now.